All right. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. Welcome to the Self-Help Comedy Hour with Ed Crasnick. I'm Ed. I'm your host. This is the world's first self-help variety show. We usually unite people from the world of self-help and the world of entertainment. Tonight, we have a very special show for you. I will be both the self-help expert and the entertainer, and I will be going through therapy during the show. And then we're going to put on an actual show for you. We have great guests. We have a very, very unique and very talented band. We have half the band, I think. We have Patrick Ferris and Jake Faulkner from the band The Americans. And so very happy to have them here. They play rock and roll, but they also play traditional American music. And it's if you've ever seen the movie Oh Brother, Where Art Thou? Or played that soundtrack 800 million times, you know what I'm talking about. So there's a big treat coming up there. And then very happy to have an old friend who is the ultimate hyphenate. She's an actress, she's a writer, she's a stand-up comic, she's a teacher, she's a coach, and she's 500 other things. And she has a split personality. And she's very talented. I've seen her on the Craig Ferguson Show and many, many other shows and many solo shows, in addition to her series called Tasty Words, which is a spoken word storytelling series, which has been ongoing for 13 years. And that's Wendy Hammers. So Wendy is here, coming up in just a little while. And I want to tell you that we're celebrity adjacent. I want to tell you that we're a block and a half from the ocean. I want to tell you that it's starting to rain a little bit in L.A., and so everyone has lost their mind because something has come out of the sky, and it's not cocaine. It's something else. We have some weather. So it's very interesting, the weather and climate. And today, this actually happened in my office, and it was fascinating, and it got me to thinking about boundaries, which I have none. But here's what happened. I was sitting in my desk. It was like a sketch. And two people walked by the office, looked in the office, walked in the office without introducing themselves, and started measuring the office for their new furniture that was coming in. I'm not making it up. And they said, how's your thing? Your thing is going over here, and I'm going to put this over here. And I was sitting like in the middle. It was like a sketch. I was sitting at my desk typing. And what happened to me is I have pre-traumatic stress syndrome. It's not post, it's pre. And what happens is I don't know what to say because my emotions didn't catch up with me until about 10 minutes later. I'm a master of it. I can make my feelings disappear quicker than David Copperfield can disappear a plane. He can do it fast. So it took me like 10 minutes. They had walked out. They didn't say anything to me. And I walked up to them and I said, guys, first of all, I wish you luck in your new business, and I hope you enjoy the office. But it's not cool to walk into somebody's office while they're sitting there and start measuring the office for what you want to put in there, the furniture-wise, right? You know that. I just wanted to go over it with you to make sure that you knew it. And they were like, "Oh yeah, we're really sorry." And then he gave me his card. So this is Los Angeles. This is a place where boundaries don't exist. It's also a commercial. It's a place that's kind of a co-working space. So there are some offices that are kind of open, and people will routinely put somebody on the speakerphone, and you can hear. Not only can you hear it, it's like you hear it clearer than your own insecurities. You hear every word that's spoken, and they talk really loudly, and they never turn their head. Like there might be somebody around me, or there might be. Now I don't know if this is how you were raised. I don't know if it's like if it's common etiquette. I don't know what it is. But in my family, we had so few boundaries. We would have entire conversations while through the bathroom door. My mother would have whole conversations about dinner, about her disappointments in marriage, about whatever was going on, and it would all be done through the bathroom door. The National Enquirer Library of Congress was there. There was the Alan Dershowitz book. It was a strange confluence of things. But you'd have these conversations, and no one ever thought to say, I really need to be by myself now because I'm in the bathroom. No, we didn't think that. So you grow up in a certain way. And really, I think the boundaries were made by entertainment. I do. I think that music and television and radio played a very big role in creating the boundaries, because what happened is when we played music, my first memory really is having the carry-all record player that my sister had in her room that had the silhouette of the boy and the girl with the ponytail hanging down on the cover, and the Beatle record spinning around on the platter, and the Capitol record label going around and around. I'd see yellow and orange, and it would sort of all blend together, go faster and faster. And I would hear the music, the Beatles songs, the 45s, and I would sing back into the record player. I was just tall enough to be at the level where I could see the platter. And when I say the platter, I'm not talking about the only remaining platter from the group, the Platters, because there's only one left. But no, we really would. My sister's room was Beatle heaven. You couldn't see a wall. You could only see pictures. You could see magazine covers. You could see a notebook which laid on her table, where it was the Beatles, that picture with the ties that I can't quite describe it, but it was one of the first major press pictures they took. My sister went to a Beatle rock concert at Suffolk Downs and went up on stage and tried to cut off a lock of Paul McCartney's hair and was jailed. And supposedly she brought it back, and it's pressed in that binder where it grows to this very day, supposedly. And she talked in a fake English accent till she was 26. So that's another problem with the family. Delusions. But if you're going to be delusional, why not be delusional about the Beatles? You have a right to be delusional about the Beatles. And then really, I'm sitting in California tonight, but when I was a kid, I remember it being February eternally and snowing sideways outside the window and pitch black when it was 3 p.m. And I remember turning on the Philco black and white television set with a coat hanger antenna. And I remember turning the channel and seeing Paul Revere and the Raiders on a beach and I didn't know where it was. And it was a show that was called Where the Action Is. And it was one of those go-go dancing, rock and roll shows. And I remember saying to myself, look, I don't know where this place is. I don't know where I am. It's black, pitch black, and it's snowing sideways. I want to go inside the TV set so I can go to where they are on the beach, and I don't care if I have to dress up like Paul Revere and the Raiders. I'm gonna go there. So that was the beginning for me. And then, of course, the Ed Sullivan Show brought my family together. It was so powerful that it brought us together for 1 hour every week. And otherwise, we were off in our own separate TV chambers playing a little family game I call Hide and Go Eat. But on Sunday nights, there we were, my mother, my father, my sister, myself, watching a 20-inch Zenith black and white television set, which was so big and so heavy we had to decorate the entire house around it. Couldn't move the set, but the people were moved. And if you spun the television set around, I've talked about this a lot, and you looked from the POV, from the point of view of the television set, you would see that these people were fully alive, and you would see what was inside of them already brought out by entertainment. So that's kind of where it stands in my own life. The boundaries were created through music and through entertainment, and to this day. And I think that's probably a good lead into to welcome our first guest of the night. Now, I have to tell you something. These guys have been playing shows that are outrageous. Opening for the Coen brothers and their new film, which is Inside Llewellyn Davis. Llewyn Davis.
Llewellyn, that's how John Stewart says it. Llewellyn Davis.
Does he say Llewellyn Davis? We always think Llewellyn. I know John, and he would be a Llewellyn kind of guy. But they've opened for that film. They've been working with, been around T-Bone Burnett for that experience. And then on December 9th, they're going to play the Wilshire Ebell Theater in an evening with Angelica Houston.
Yeah, she has a new book out, and we're just playing a little bit of music as an introduction. I'm playing some Irish music.
Okay, this is amazing. You have an amazing. These gigs are fantastic. They're very interesting, and I guess I want to welcome Patrick Ferris and Jake Faulkner and the Americans. And so, welcome to the show, guys.
Thank you.
And I have to paint the picture for you now. Patrick is sitting on the couch here with a guitar, and Jake is standing up with a stand-up bass that weighs 10,000 pounds. Am I right? About 10,000 pounds. Has the bow in his hand, has a look of, who is this Jew talking to me? No. No. And the greatest hair I've ever seen in my life. Both guys do. So here's the thing. I got to ask you just quickly, and then we'll talk afterwards. But Patrick, how do you guys? How do you rehearse? How did you pick this kind of music to play, and where does it all come from?
Well, of the band, as you say, this is just half the band.
Right.
Of the band, Jake and I have known each other the longest, and we've been sort of talking about being in a band together since we were teenagers, 16 and 15.
Right.
And around that same time, we've been playing a lot individually. We lived in different cities, but we knew each other through family. We've been sort of independently learning a lot of Bob Dylan songs. A lot of different songs that we would come to learn were influenced by older music. So when that dawned on us and we started listening to the music that came before it, that's when something sort of clicked and we began this arms race of trying to learn the most about old music and know the highest number of old recordings. I'm not going to say. I mean, it is a little bit unusual in that you're very young. So was it your parents or your families that introduced you to this music? Was this music playing in the house, or what? I think it was just what happened to appeal to both of us. No one else my age that I knew was into that kind of music at the time.
Right.
When I went to school with or anything like that.
Wow. So was the reaction that, like, what are you doing? Was it, or was it like, that's interesting, but what is it?
When you're a teenager playing music, it's not exactly like you're not playing big venues.
Well, that's true. That's true. But like friends and stuff, were they supportive? I guess they would have been.
I used to just force it on everybody. I started a folk club at my high school, and you weren't hanging out with me if you weren't involved in this music so much.
Yeah.
Jake and I used to share. It was right when digitizing your music became a thing that you could do.
Right.
So Jake and I, every time we would get together, he was down here and I was in San Francisco. Every time we'd be in the same place, we'd combine our hard drives and we'd put together all the old music we could find. It became, we started calling it just the collection, and we would give it to people. We'd say, like, here, you want the collection? It's all the old music we found so far.
Wow.
All the 20s and 30s string band music and spirituals, folk blues, all that kind of stuff.
And what is it? What was the draw for you in this music? Like, what did it create in you that other music did not?
Well, at first, I don't think I heard it properly. I think most people probably would say that. If you grow up on modern music and you hear old music for the first time, it sounds quaint, maybe small. Definitely not what it means to me today, or what it meant a year after I was exposed to it. I'd say now what I would say is so great about it is that you're hearing music from people who did not grow up hearing recorded music. It's the only time you'll ever hear that.
Fascinating.
And I think that's probably what makes it. That's at least a key of what makes it so special. But really, it's just great. I mean, it's just some of the best music. That's what we liked about it.
It has a depth to it that is so way down in it's roots music. It really does feel like that, and nothing else feels like that. That's the thing, you know?
So for a while, I think probably Jake, you went through something similar too, but there was a period where that was all I was interested in. I was just playing nothing but that kind of music. And I know when Jake and I would talk on the phone, that's what he was doing. We were both guitar players, and we were both trying to learn how to play like the old blues guys, like Charlie Patton and like Booker White and Skip James. And then that just led us into all these new places, fiddle music and there's a whole. It's amazing how diverse and how much the music that was recorded back then. People don't think of it, but there really were quite a few records made back then. We still haven't gotten near to the bottom of them.
But have you met any other players who are older, maybe that actually
older and younger?
Yeah.
There are people who do it, and people do it in various ways. There's a lot to digest.
But then here comes "Oh Brother, Where Art Thou," and here comes that CD.
Actually, I think that came out before I even played the guitar, if I can remember right. I don't remember what year exactly that came out, but I think I remember being a kid, and I didn't really understand the music because
You remember hearing it, though?
Yes.
Wow, amazing, amazing. So now you get to know T-Bone Burnett, and you get to meet him, and it's got to be a pretty fantastic thing.
And when we built the band with the other two members, that was a common interest, but it wasn't the kind of music we played together. I would write lyrics, and we would put together these songs, and our deal was to make modern music, not to make something that was nostalgic, something, modern rock and roll music, but that sort of was driving everything that we did. The old music was the stars in the sky. It was the thing that kept us on track.
So these are original songs, but they are inspired by some of the older music.
Yeah, a lot of the music that we make is just sort of is grounded in that, because we still to this, we still do play that kind of stuff together when we have the opportunity to.
But you play rock and roll too.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, what would you like to do? What is the song, and does it have any setup?
Sure, I can tell you about it. This is a song we've been playing for a little while now, maybe about 2 or 3 years. It's a song called Gospel Roads. It's an original tune, and I don't know what to say about it except it's a story song, so the words are important.
Love it, love it. Okay, so here's Patrick Ferris and Jacob Faulkner and half of the Americans with Gospel Roads.
Lift him up, that's all. Whistled as he filled his old suitcase. I threw my crutches in the trunk, sealed the oils, packed it all away. Every crossroad looked alike to me in the poor towns where we drove. Just a dusty country highway, but my father called them gospel roads. When he raised his voice, they'd fall silent as if called by name. And he spoke of people long ago, living places far away. We'd chill them like the carnival, the old and the young. Turn their pockets inside out, blessed our hearts for doing what we'd done. We brightened up their faces, once weary and forlorn. They discovered but a clever scheme where visions of their hopeful dreams were born. And I put my hand in his, and it was time to go. We'd strike a tent and kick up dust all the way back up that gospel road. He'd send down his brand new boots, and I'd read aloud his sermon. We drove all the way to Arkansas on other people's money that we'd turned. My father used to warn them, one day it'll all fall apart. Now that I know it to be true, I wonder if for once he was speaking from his heart. When the day came to bury him, I had a chance to start anew. But you stick to what you know, I took to his once I'd outgrown my Sunday suit. I pulled up my grieving roots before they had a chance to grow. I cut him from my memory, and I drove east down some old gospel road. Fire of greed burns so richly in the torches on the walls. You can't take your eyes off it, even as your castle falls. And I know my loving mother raised me better than that. I used to wonder why she bothered. The whole world looked so much brighter from where she sat. At the table in the small room, at the end of the hall, where I learned many a fable, all to do with righteousness and law. I can't take my mind off it, and each night ends alone. I see her face among the souls I sold on a heaven that I'll never know. Now when I drive down those old gospel roads, I feel closer to those tales of sin, seldom understood but often told. Lift him up, that's all. It's all that I know. But the game's played out and every door's been boarded up along those gospel.
Oh my God, that's just beautiful. That is sensational. That's just beautiful to listen to. That's Gospel Roads with Patrick Ferris and Jake Faulkner, half of the Americans. Now, where does that come from? Where does that come from? Where does that kind of storytelling come from in you?
I don't know the answer to that. It's just sometimes the song comes to you and you write it. If you can write it properly, then you have it, and if you can't, then you gotta try again.
Does it usually come to you in bursts?
Yeah.
It does.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Wow, that's quite a story. That's a great song. Great song. Okay, well, this is amazing. Where do they find out about your music? Like, where can people find everything out about you?
The best place, theamerikansmusic.com.
Theamerikansmusic.com. And the name just sort of came along with the traditional music? I mean, it was just there?
Yeah.
Wow. It would be amazing if you were called the Russians. It would just be so different.
Who knows? If there's a lawsuit, we might have to.
You never know. You never know. I leave it to you. I defer to you, guys. If you feel like playing another one now, that's fine. If you can wait, and you want to do that, we can move along with the show. I'm going to defer to you because you're the guys with the instruments.
What's that? Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah, we'll do one. We'll do it in a little bit. That works.
That'd be great.
Okay.
That'd be great.
All right.
Okay, so we'll see you guys in just a little bit. Back with the Americans in just a little bit. Thank you so much. That was a beautiful song.
Thank you.
All right. Fantastic. All right, you're listening to the Self-Help Comedy Hour with Ed Crasnick, and it's a self-help variety show. But that was one of the most healing songs for me. it made me forget my therapist. And I'm happy to do that at any point. Speaking of which, I actually did get a letter from a letter. That's I'm in the roots now. I'm in the history. I got an email from an old therapist because I was in some documentary that he saw. It's called When Jews Were Funny. It's actually pretty good. And he was at a film festival and he saw this thing and he wrote me a letter and he said, you were funny then, you're still funny now. And I'm not sure that that's something you want to hear from your therapist. What you want to hear is, I'm glad you're better. No, or I'm glad you're a happy person then and you're happy now. All right, well, we're going to keep the show rolling along. And no matter where you're listening, you might be listening to this on a desktop, a laptop, a wireless mic inside your head. But my next guest is an old friend. I'm very happy that she's here. Writer, actress, host, coach, teacher, all of the above. Great stand-up comic. And she's got a lot of stuff going on. And I have to... and her name is Wendy Hammers. I should mention that. Wendy...
Ed.
It's so nice to see you.
You too.
My God.
That music was insane.
Wasn't that crazy?
Oh, my goodness.
It was really great.
I mean, I love disco, techno pop, house music, all of that. This is the antithesis of that.
Right.
And so you breathe differently when you listen to it. It just hit me in my heart.
It goes into your gut. It goes into your soul. And it's a pleasure. It's a healing thing. It's like we don't have that enough.
I agree.
Or maybe you do. I mean, I know I don't have it. But now I have to ask you, Tasty Words is a spoken word storytelling salon, a show that you've been doing for 13 years.
Yeah.
You also have a solo show called Ripe.
I do.
Now, there's a food theme that's going on, and I have to ask you, not what projects you're working on, but what are you serving?
What are you eating?
That's just sort of a coincidence.
It is a coincidence, but there are no coincidences, as they say. I would say Tasty Words happened because, the most random way, I was planning on producing the show. I found a little theater in Hollywood. It was above a Persian ice cream store, and the theater fell through, but I had made a deal with the Persian ice cream store, which, by the way, has an Irish name. It's on La Brea. I don't know the name of it, but anyhow, I already came up with the name Tasty Words, and even though I ended up, because they were going to give free ice cream to my audience, so after the theater fell apart, I liked the name. I just stayed with the name. Ripe happened because the title happened. I had the title for Ripe a decade before I had the show. Before I was a mother, before I knew what it was about, I knew that I wanted to do something about ripe, seasoned, arriving at yourself. I didn't know what the show was. The title was first, and I figured out the play years later. I just didn't like the title. So.
You just have the title come in. Well, it's really interesting because like you love acting. I know that you love acting, and I know you've been doing it for a long time. And now you're teaching writing and you're coaching, doing all these things. There's a drive, there's an energy that comes from you where you're going to get these shows done, and you're going to bring community to it. You're going to involve community in it. Does that come? Was that part of you as a kid?
That's such a great and astute way of putting it, because community is the point of the whole thing. Like, stand-up comedy is about community for me. It was never about being the funniest person in the room. I wanted to make people laugh and have a good time, but I wanted people to feel like the world was a sweeter, smaller place. I was always interested in that. And as a child, too, I always liked throwing parties. I was always very social. I liked giving people an excuse to feel good. Yeah. So, that's definitely the through line in all the stuff I do.
Well, yeah, because I saw you perform recently, not so long ago, and it was for a TV show, and Parental Discretion. It's a very good show.
Yeah.
And Stephanie Wilder and Hugh Fink, our friend, executive producer. And you were talking to the audience.
Yeah, they're on their second season on Nick Mom, which is a division of Nickelodeon.
That's right. It's very good. Look out for it. It's really good. It's very smart. It's very funny, and it has a sharpness to it that most shows don't have. So now, so you're talking to the audience, and it's like they're in your living room, and you're talking to them, and then you started asking a couple questions about sexuality. and people just went nuts.
Yeah, well, I had a room full of women, a room full of
Moms.
who had left the kids with their husband or a sitter,
Right.
had put on lipstick and had a glass of wine, so they were so happy to even be out of the house.
Right.
And that they could just hang out and be like a girls' night out. That was the environment that they wanted to create at the show. And so I just got to talk to them, and I asked them all the things I would ask my girlfriends over lunch. Just had a group full of women. I mean, I did a show also for slightly drunk 400 Jewish women in St. Louis last week. The most fun.
You had a blast.
Yeah, most fun you can have legally. You get a group of women in a room, and we're not afraid to just talk. And like immediately, I have 400 new friends in St. Louis. That's how women are. We just connect, right?
Yeah, but as a performer, you're talking to people very personally.
Yeah.
Now, that's courageous. I think it's great. Does it just come naturally to you, or is it something that you had to figure out how to relax did you ever go through any of that, or you just once you hit the
No, I
once
mean,
you're in
when you
front
say
of people,
courageous,
that's it.
and I'm not trying to be funny, but when you say courageous, I think like if I were to be an accountant or a welder, that would be courageous.
Right.
Like to me, talking to people and just finding out what makes people tick and connect, that's normal to me. So
But
I've
it's like
always-
you're talking to one person.
Yeah, that's when I'm on stage. That's how I feel. I don't have any fear.
There's no fear on stage.
Only when it's TV because you don't want to make any mistakes. But when it's a live performance, I feel free. It's fun.
And so solo shows for you, and you've done a number of them.
3 of them. Yeah.
It's always that kind of feeling. Was there a challenge with any of them? Is there a challenge personally? Because some of the shows touch on things that can be pretty challenging.
That's a great question. My first solo show was when I was in NYU. It was called Sweatpants, and I was fortunate enough to study with the great late Spalding Gray. He was my teacher. He was amazing,
It's a good
master
teacher to have.
storyteller. Yeah,
Yeah.
amazing. And he used to do these crazy exercises like we'd have the whole class run out into the street with a tape recorder and have to go hang out in a laundromat around the corner and then come and not talk to anybody and then come back and immediately speak as quickly as we could into the tape recorder to create material. Because this class was called Fictionalizing the Self, and it was about how to take material that's personal and make it interesting and stage worthy without it being self-indulgent, to find that balance. So those were my roots. So I started solo performance, and that led to stand-up. And stand-up, I was like this sort of accidental 25-year detour, and then I went back to my roots as a solo artist.
Solo performing led to stand-up.
Yes.
This is very unusual.
Well, yeah, because I've been doing it long enough that, people weren't doing as much solo performance then. But I just knew that I got on stage and talked about my life, and people laughed and cried, and I was just telling my story. And unlike acting, where you have to wait for the phone to ring and someone else to give you permission to play, I thought, I could actually do stand-up, I could actually do solo work, and I could just do my own thing. So I like that freedom.
And it's great that it comes from you. You know, you learn early on that it's not important what the venue is. The show is you. It comes from inside of you.
That's funny you're saying that, because now I'm getting ready to tour with Ripe, and I have a relatively sophisticated lighting plot now for when I was doing the show in one city. But once you're on the road and you start to go in and out of cities, you can't have that. You're cueing it, teching it, and then you got to go up and do it. So it's going to go very simple now. It's going to be like, hi, lights are on, tell the story, and no lights practically. I mean, I'll have the other elements, but I won't have much with lights because I don't have time, and it's not necessary. It really is about the story, and you know.
And also all of these kind of, I mean, the solo work, acting, you've kept it all going at the same kind of at the same time, and you're a parent as well.
Yeah.
So I mean, how do you balance things in your life, and how do you take care of yourself?
I know. I love that question. You know, you told me a couple things we might talk about today, and of all the things on the list, that question jumped out at me because I think it's a really interesting thing. One way I take care of myself is I don't spend a lot of time. After I heard your opening monologue, you're going to love this. I don't spend a lot of time being mean to myself, or I practice extreme kindness. I don't like judge or overthink. I just like think, I'm almost 53 years old. I've been around the block. I know a few things. I'm going to do this, and it'll either be great or it won't. I'll do something else. Like I don't get.
There's no meaning attached. Not a heavy meaning.
Yeah, and also I have a child. When you have a child, you don't have time for that.
Right.
Somebody needs you. You know. So I dance like it's my religion. I dance hip hop dance many days a week because it clears the cobwebs out of my brain. I have to do that. I don't do drugs or drink. I'm really very straight in that way. And a lot of my friends do. I mean, they're all potheads.
Sure.
Not all of them, but people do that because they need that to, like a lot of other comics I know, they need that to sort of get even because the brain is going so fast all the time. I don't have that. I have to move my body. That's my version of I guess, of that thing, of that outlet. I don't know. I
What-
eat healthy. I read. I don't pick up the phone if somebody's calling me that I don't want to talk to. And I know that sounds like a very silly little thing, but when I work with writers, I tell students, like, if you're going to an audition or an important meeting and there's somebody who pushes your buttons and they call you on the way to the audition, like, let's say you have an issue with a parent or somebody, that would be a bad time to talk to them, because you'll lose track of yourself and you won't be able to do your work.
Right.
So you have to set boundaries.
Don't
you know?
allow yourself to get derailed,
Yeah.
to get pulled off track.
Yeah. And I always tell my students, you can look at any particular thing in life and say, is this taking me closer, toward, or away from my goal? It's very simple. Every action will take you closer or away from what it is that you're after. And it's not that I'm so, like, anal about it, or that I'm like, oh my God, I have to do this every day. It's not that at all. It's just I have a bigger vision, especially now with this play Ripe, that I want to share it with as many people, especially women, but people, as I can. And so I try not to do things that don't honor that. That's the best way I can put it.
Well, and I assume that that's what in your teaching, when you have writers groups, you have seminars and classes.
Yeah, I run a school called Write at Home,
Yeah.
which I started out of necessity. I was going through a divorce. I had a young child. I was a single mom who'd made my living as a comic on the road. Suddenly I have this baby and no husband and no financial support. What am I going to do? And I reinvented myself as a writing coach, because I knew how to do that. I knew I could work with people. My mother's a teacher, and I've always had great respect for teachers. So I started working with people and, helping them take their ideas and trust them. But basically what I do is I kick people's asses in a nice way. And I remind them that if they have a deadline, they work backwards from a deadline, they can get somewhere. But, most of us, most creative people, left to our own devices without a deadline, it would be Oprah and chocolate on the couch. There's nothing's happening.
Right.
So if you don't figure out, okay, I actually have a deadline. That's why I started doing Tasty Words, because here's what happened with Tasty Words is this, you mentioned the spoken word salon. A couple things happened. Friend of mine passed away. Friend of mine who you know and love, Judy. So we're going to talk about. But
Yeah, we
so
are
she,
gonna
she
talk
passed
about
away. 9/11 happened, and I went through a divorce. Those three things happened within the space of about a year and a half. And I thought, if I do not have a place, if I do not create a place for my friends and I to get on stage and tell our stories, our heads are going to explode. That's how I felt between 9/11, the divorce, and the death. So I did one show at a little children's bookstore on Montana Avenue.
Love that place.
Yeah. And now I've done 112 shows. Because people were hungry for story. And it was interesting when you were talking to these wonderful musicians and he said, this is a story song. I mean, usually that's why the disco queen from Jersey, actually loves country music, because there's a story. There's actually a journey involved, and it's exciting
Right.
to have that.
Yeah.
So I'm drawn to stories that way, and I always have been.
Yeah, I mean, I think that and listening to those guys and their music too, it allows you to be present and to be full and to not want for anything, because when you tell somebody a story, you're keeping them company.
So true. I've had people come to Tasty Words and they say, I haven't had someone tell me a story since I was a child. It just makes me feel taken care of. And you go into a room of strangers, although now at this point a lot of people are regulars, so it's more like a community, but still there are people that don't know anybody, but you have a shared experience. Laughter is certainly that. Laughter makes the world a sweeter, smaller place. People feel less alone. But even when it's a serious moment in the storytelling, if it's a universal kind of thing that people can connect to, they feel like, oh, somebody else understands me. I'm not the only one with crazy parents. I'm not the only one who had a screwed up childhood. I'm not the only one whose heart was broken. I'm not the only one who wished and dreamed. You hear in other people's stories yourself, you identify. Then I think that's what great art and great writing does. It allows you to see the world in a different way, and also to feel part of the world.
Yeah, I mean, there's nothing more powerful. We talk about it all the time. There's nothing more powerful than humor and emotion. Humor and emotion is together.
Yeah.
There is nothing better. Every movie that you see that you love, every show that you watch that you love, everything that moves you, it's moving people, that you're moved.
I agree, and I will say that as much as I have a great regard for stand-up comedy as an art form, and I really, my hat's off to people who really, that's all that they do. They're just masters of that. The reason that I moved away from that, even though I still do it sometimes, but the reason I moved into the storytelling and the spoken word, solo shows and all of that, was because the arc of that. Because in life, you laugh, then you cry, then you laugh, then something's absurd, then you think, oh my God, it's hopeless, and then you laugh again. All in the space of, an hour it could happen, or a day. And storytelling is more that way. It has more of a natural flow to it, where stand-up is much more bada bing, bada boom, stand-up, set-up, punch. I had this kind of crazy theory that I don't know what you'll think of as being a male comic, but I used to think that stand-up comic was more like a male sexual energy, like set-up, punch is like sort of like foreplay, orgasm, sleep. And then with storytelling and women, it's more like many things going on at once. There's storytelling, you come back, there's tangents, and there's more of a flow to it that's not as result oriented, if that makes any sense.
You had me in the middle. I think it was no, but I
you lost your orgasm.
Yeah, I get locked in. But really, I think that's really true, and I certainly think that was true when Evening at the Improv came on television,
right? And
it trained an audience of people to watch somebody in front of a brick wall, and that there was a rhythm to it.
Yeah, and now
this was
your
that
turn.
Rhythm.
Yeah, and it basically, I'll explain to people that stand-up comedy in a comedy club is like when actors are in a scene and you have a scene partner, it's one actor bouncing off another. So the scene partner was the audience.
Right.
And the audience would get their cue. Oh, I get it. Now that's our turn. It's our turn to laugh.
Right.
That's our part. Yeah. And with storytelling, it has more of a dance to it, more of a flow and more of a give and take that goes in and out of different kinds of emotions.
And you're allowed to be, it's not, there was a theater in San Francisco it's still there, and it's a great theater. It's called The Marsh.
I know The Marsh.
And they had just opened.
Yeah.
And I did a show there.
Wow.
And there were dinette tables, and there was like a black riser, and that was it.
Yeah, it's the only theater in the country, to my knowledge, that only just expressly does solo shows. That's all they do now.
Stephanie, I mean, it was unbelievable, and it was Stephanie Wiseman, I think, and it was like I was home. Like everything else was, and all of a sudden it was like, oh, you mean I can stand on the stage and also not have to hold a microphone? Mm-hmm. I never wanted to hold a microphone. To me, I thought that instead of being a power, to me it was like I can't be my whole self.
Right.
So,
well, being a Jersey, Jew that, is sort of like Italian by osmosis, I talk with my hands, so the microphone gets in the way because I want to gesticulate. On the radio, I'm like going,
Yeah, sure. But I mean, this is an interesting thing. Mm-hmm. So, but in your, have there been things that in your own development, like as an actress, are there things that you've had to learn in acting that are special to that discipline as opposed to the other things, or is it really just a matter of showing up and being present?
Do you mean learn as an actor first as a solo artist as opposed to other kind of acting?
Yeah. Is there a different energy of being a solo performer than there is when you go on camera or you go?
Well, when you're working with somebody else's words, if someone else has written the text, you decide or design or find a way in so that you have an emotional connection to the material.
Right.
When you've written the material and you often lived the material,
that's it.
You don't have to work on it. It's just like you say, you show up and you go, I'm just going to tell my story now. Many years ago, I did my second solo show, which was Undressing New Jersey and Other States of Mind. And I remember the director was a man named Mark Travis, who had also directed.
Mark very well.
Mark. So he directed A Bronx Tale with Chaz Palminteri.
Yeah.
And he came backstage, I think it was Chaz came backstage and said to me before my show what Mark had said to him, which was basically you go out there and you tell your story like it's the first time you ever get to tell it and the last time you ever get to tell it. Mm. And I never forgot that. I was like, okay, so that's what you're bringing to the table. Like there's no saving it. It's really like, I'm just going to tell my story and tell my truth and trust that the audience will get it. Or not everybody has to get it. You find your own audience. One thing about solo performances, you got to really believe in your that's the point I was trying to make before. When you're doing somebody else's material, hopefully you're excited about it and connected to it. But a lot of times it's a paycheck. An actor could be working as a guest star doing a show, and maybe it's not a story they would have written, but they're getting hired as an actor for hire, and you're just happy to be working. Well, if you're doing a solo show and you're going out there 6, 7, 8 nights, performances a week, and you're pouring your guts out and you're telling your story, you better really care about that story. Otherwise, you shouldn't be doing that story. I always tell my students, write the stories that only you can write And if you think it's like mediocre, then don't write that. Switch and write something else. Really get
But
excited.
sometimes in the process of like developing a show, you can write something because I mean, I've had this many times where you want the audience to get something,
Right.
as opposed to being and living the experience of, acting the experience of what you're talking about. You have in your mind a picture of what it looks like instead of just being there.
Right.
And it's challenged because you have to let your ego go and serve the story that you want to tell. What is the story that I'm telling?
Yeah, and
or is it important to tell this story?
And the story, right, and the story will dictate too. Like, sometimes you've always, I'm sure you've heard many writers, and you probably have this experience, where you start out and you think you know what you're writing, and the story goes, no, we're not writing that story, we're writing this story. It's
Right.
taking you in another direction.
Yeah. If you listen.
Yeah, right. I heard the wonderful writer Elizabeth Gilbert speak in Malibu at this writer series not too long ago, and she said that her feeling was that stories were like clouds floating above your head. They're out there, I'm paraphrasing, but that the stories or the ideas are out there. And they're looking for home. They're looking for a writer who's ready to write them down. And if you have an instinct to do that story, to write that, and you don't, it's going to float by and find somebody else to write it, because it's an idea in the
Ether,
zeitgeist,
yeah.
that has to be in the world, that has to come out, has to be expressed.
Yeah.
So I thought that was really interesting. It's like,
great.
yeah.
It's great. And so you have these people. There are workshops that you put on. People come, and they come and you take them through a course.
Yeah.
And so and are there people?
And I want to give everybody who's listening my very first assignment that I give all my students right now.
Sure.
Is that okay?
Yes.
Because I think anybody who's interested in writing or any kind of introspection, being that this is a healing, comedy, entertainment,
Yes, yes,
psychotherapy. So the first assignment I give all my students, I say, don't get nervous. You can't get it wrong. There's no right or wrong. Don't jump off a bridge. Here's the assignment. I want you to write your life story in 100 words or less. Just the facts, ma'am. All the big aha moments without which you could not tell your story. Some of the sentences will only be 1 or 2 words long, and it might not make any sense to anybody else. But it's a starting place, and then from there you'll write your other stories. But it's amazing, if you only have that 100-word construct, you will get to the big moments.
It's a great idea, because that's a framework for everything.
Yeah. I mean, people can develop a whole solo show or a book out of that, or a film, but that's a place to start.
Yeah.
And then the other thing I always have them do is I say, imagine I'm your creativity fairy godmother, and I tap you on the head with a magic wand, and what would the 3 creative things you'd want in your creative life, and dream big. And if you had no limitations, what would you? Because people don't know what they're after. If you don't know what the target is, how are you going to get there? Got to figure out what I'd like to. Everybody wants to sort of be. Everybody wants to be famous and skinny. Like everybody wants, like certainly they'll like to be famous, like to be rich. Really, what do you really want? Oh well, I want to touch people with my work. Oh, that's different. Like, can you get specific on what you want?
Right.
Really narrow it down. If somebody comes to me and they says, I want to write a blockbuster screenplay, I'm like, well, that's nice, but that's not the approach. That's not going to work. It's what is the story that you're compelled to tell? What must you, before you die, what story do you need to bring to life? That's a place to start.
Yeah. These are good questions to ask yourself before you do. Now, you as a writer, I mean, this is the challenge. When you teach something, it then becomes a challenge to live it at the same time. Sometimes, but you practice this stuff every day. I mean, this is what you practice.
My acting teacher and colleague and friend is Jeffrey Tambor. And
he's pretty good.
He's pretty good.
He's okay. Spalding Gray, Jeffrey Tambor.
I'm not kidding.
I
picked
it's okay. It's not bad. It's all right.
Jeffrey's my teacher for a long time, and he really, he was always, people would be annoyed in class because he would have to miss classes because he was working as an actor. I'm like, it's an acting class. We're here to learn how to be working actors.
That's what we're here
Why
for.
wouldn't you be inspired by that? So
Right.
to me, I was like happy he was working, because there are a lot of teachers, as we know, that don't ever work.
Right.
They're teaching. But they say those who can do, those who can't teach, those who can't teach gym, or something. Those who can't teach gym administrate. It was a whole thing.
That's
but
right.
I feel like I do my work, and hopefully that's inspiring to my students. I just, for the first time in 13 years, I took off November, December of my Tuesday writing class. I've been doing it consistently for all these years because I'm getting ready to go on tour, and I need to do my own work. So, and then they'll go, okay, so when I come back, then we'll start again. Got to do both.
Now, and your mom, your parents.
Yes.
Now,
a teenager.
Now,
help!
Isn't that amazing?
Oy.
So
Oh my God.
So how are you dealing with that? How are
So
you
he's a
handling that?
17-year-old,
17.
6'2",
Yeah.
Because as you know, his father's very
Steve,
tall,
yeah.
tallest Jew in America, tallest comedian in America that's Jewish except for Brad Garrett. That's what we determined.
That's fantastic.
Yeah. Steve Middleman is
Steve
his father.
Middleman, great comic.
Great comic. And my son has a lot of his funny bones. He has a lot of his timing, which,
That's great time.
yeah, it's wonderful. So, but what can I tell you? He's a senior in high school, most wonderful kid and pain in my ass. Totally challenging, love him dearly, and it's really, teenager thing is a whole other thing. Because you're part of what you're here to do as a teenager is become autonomous and say, I'm my own person.
Right.
But I'm my own person, I'm my own man, don't tell me what to do, I need a sandwich. Like it's all like
Good title for a show, by the way.
Well, he called me once. I was working in Vegas, and he was in Santa Monica in our house, and I was in Vegas, and he called me to ask me what was in the refrigerator. And I said, Griffin, the refrigerator is 2 feet from you and hundreds of miles from me. Like, can you get up? And then he wanted a driver's license. I said, how are you going to find the 405? You can't find the refrigerator. You have to start being a grown up.
Right.
But so it's like that baby. One foot's in baby land, one foot's in grown up land. Don't tell me what to do. I don't like you. Kiss me goodnight. It's very confusing.
Again, another great title for a show. Don't bother me, I can't cope. These are titles for Broadway shows. They really are.
All right, we'll write that one.
My arms are too short to box with God. You don't know where the refrigerator is, get a sandwich. These are titles for shows. Now so there's a really weird question, but I'm going to ask it anyway.
Please, bring it.
What qualities does Griffin have
I know where you're going.
that
Griffin.
remind you of yourself that you don't like,
Oh my goodness.
or or not that you don't like, but that are difficult?
Well, I think the hardest
For
thing
you.
is the part. I don't know if every parent. I don't know about other parents. I can speak for myself. You tell me. You're a parent, so
Yes.
you tell me about this. When you have a child, you want them to grow up and become their own person, but on some level, you just assume they're going to be like you because they came from you.
Yes.
So, my son and I are very different in certain ways that I find challenging, because I think, well, at his age, I did this, but he's not me,
Right.
and he's not going to be me. He's more like his father in those areas, and as you know, I'm not married to his father anymore, so it's challenging. The things that are the most challenging, I am fast-moving, frenetic, type A personality. My son is Southern California boy who's like, dude, you know what I mean? Like, whatever. You get the people on the radio can't see what I'm doing, but I always say he suffers from eyerolliosis, which is like eyeballs like in the back of his head.
Yeah. So
the
that's
slowness
a sort
and
of
the
speed,
which his father had,
Yeah.
and worked brilliantly for his comedy.
Right.
But tougher when you're trying to get somebody in the car and off to school on time, and they're like, I'll be there. I'll be there in 5. I'll be ready in 2 minutes to walk out the door. He's in his underwear. Really? You'll be ready? It's like that kind of thing. Like, let's go, people. Move the trains.
Move it along.
Move it along, people. Nothing left to see here. Just get in the car. So that's frustrating. But so your question was, what qualities do I have that are?
Yeah. Is there something that you see in him that you recognize that may
Such
be?
a good question.
I don't know. I mean, it's a weird question, but but
no.
it's
What came up for me was I'm thinking all the things about him that drive me crazy remind me of his father.
there you go. There you go. It's not me. It's you.
Yeah, it's not me.
It is not
no,
me.
I think the things that he has that are like me are well, my son is very much smarter and much smarter than I ever was at his age. But when things come easily to him, and then when they don't, he doesn't have a lot of patience. Like, he just expects he should know things
Right.
automatically.
Yeah.
But doesn't like to ask for help. So
Yeah, I'm very familiar with that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, so
as a parent, do you have qualities that you look at your children, you can already see are reminiscent of you, or the antithesis of you?
Yes. No, there are definitely some that are, and I'll just, myself, just think way too much. Just think way too much. It's also a gift.
Uh-huh.
So it's what I I like it.
Yeah, you
But
live from
live in
there.
imagination and thoughts, and sometimes to create things, but you don't want to be at the effect of it. You don't want to not live because you're busy thinking about living. And so that's a big one
That's
for me.
well put.
So at any rate, but that's what we're learning is and I'm certainly learning from her as well a lot about being sensitive to yourself. That somebody who is sensitive to the outside world has a challenge of learning to be sensitive to themselves. And that's a big one.
Yeah, well, my son is a sensitive kid. He's a very, I think it's trickier for boys because there's not as, like you were saying at the beginning of the show about how do you feel being cut off from feelings. He has a world going on inside him, and I get a lot of monosyllabic answers.
Yeah.
So it's like, how's it going? It's good. It's cool. Like you don't get much, but there's a lot going on in there, and I wish he could express it more. But I think that's a maturity thing. I think that comes in time.
Yeah, and that's the other thing. You want people to be who they are, and that's certainly a challenge I have as a parent. Is I want to do something. And the thing is, really, and I don't know why I would equate this, but it really is kind of true. When my mother passed away, I go there for a reason. When my mother passed away, it was just me and her in a room, and it was for 3 days.
Wow.
And she was a talker, and she was not able to talk. And nothing was required of me except to be there. There was nothing.
That's a lot, though.
There was nothing to say. It's a lot. And the same thing is true when you're a parent. You think that there's a lot of things that you should be doing, and really, the child needs you to be present.
Yeah.
If you're not present, but you're doing a lot of things, that doesn't really help your child sometimes.
Right.
And I really suffer from that a lot. I try to do a lot of things, and I think I could do a lot less and be present a lot more. So anyway, I just say that. I equate those two things because it really, when you're with somebody, you're with them. And that speaks volumes over let me create an activity.
I agree. And now we have so many opportunities for people to be not present because they're in technology. And this generation of children, it's extraordinary. I mean, they just don't know stillness. And stillness and, just like hanging out without it being about texting somebody every 5 seconds.
Right. So much stimulation, and that's why listening to a story, again, that's a perfect antidote to that, which is that it's healing for the teller, and it's healing for the listener.
It brings you in the present moment.
In the
a
present
really
moment.
well-crafted story that's given as an offering to the audience or to the listener will make you stop being in your world and go into that world, and then you get to go back into your world with the new information you got from the story, and so it enriches your life.
Now, for you, are there, I'm sure you love movies. I know you love movies, and you love TV too. You've seen a lot. Are there go-to movies that you would watch repeatedly? Like, what would you watch that would be like that you would go, this is going to help me no matter what. No matter what kind of mood I'm in, no matter what I'm doing, this is going to help me.
First, let me say that my references are all going to be pretty old because one thing that did change a lot in my life when I had a child was I started going to far less films, which is sad. And I look forward to going to them again now that he's older. But I mean, sort of go to Tootsie.
Yeah.
Sunshine Boys.
Yeah, Sunshine Boys. Interesting you would mention that.
Love. Defending Your Life. One of my favorite, Albert Brooks.
Great concept.
Early Woody Allen. What do I love?
What do you think a movie that like you saw that sort of like sometimes there's a pivotal movie where you see something and it's like, oh, I never thought they could do that.
Oh, you
now
mean in terms of the filmmaking, in terms of what?
Well, just this opens up a whole world for me that I see this.
The first film that opened up a whole world for me was I saw a movie that made me want to be an actor. It was a movie called The Effect of Gamma Rays on the Man in the Moon Marigolds.
Brilliant.
Remember, it was a book,
Yes.
and the reason it had it was an incredible film, but also there was a young girl in it, Nell Potts. I think she's Joan Woodward and Paul Newman's daughter, and she was about the age that I was when I saw the film, and I went, oh, I could do that. Like, that's a girl like me on a big screen telling a story. I could do that. That was the movie where I literally went, I want to jump into the screen. I remember that feeling when I saw that film.
Yeah, that's
but
a
in
good
terms of
play,
like
too.
stories that like sort of open you up, wow, God, there's so many that are for different reasons.
Well, Spalding, great. I have to go back as your teacher. Because when I see Swimming to Cambodia or Monster in a Box, Monster in a Box is my favorite thing
I
of
saw
all
them
time.
both as live performances first. That's how I remember seeing them. Lincoln Center.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Now
amazing.
this thing, Spalding Gray used to do this thing where he would, he'd take the notebook and read it.
Yeah, he was a sit-down monologist.
Sit-down monologist and have a glass of water. But everything was timed out. There was a choreography to it.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah. Well, he also was from the New England, and
Yes.
there was a certain rhythm to the way that he spoke, and no R's, letter R's.
Marvelous.
Yeah.
Marvelous.
Right. All of that. He was a really interesting character. I mean, he had a very sad ending to his life. I don't know if you know, he took his life.
Yeah.
And what I experienced with him was I was dating a guy when I was just out of college, just out of college, who was quite a bit older than me, and he was like everything that your parents would hate in a guy and more. He was, like ex-con, bike messenger, Italian, much older than me. I mean, my grandmother once saw him in front of my building, and she said, "Oh, is that the super?" Like she didn't know I lived with him. I go, "Yeah, that's the super. Yeah, that's the landlord, Grandma." So, and his name was Frankie Gentili. His last name was Gentile. Like literally, I met a Gentile named Gentili. Like, how did I do that?
How far can you go?
Right. So, but so Frankie and I were these crazy bike riders. We rode all over Manhattan. We did the 5-borough bike tour. And he and I were riding across the Brooklyn Bridge one day. And who was coming towards us but Spalding Gray? And this was after I knew Spalding, and Spalding was my teacher. And he stopped to talk. And he was more interested in talking to me that day than he ever was when I was his student, because he was interested in the potential story. He saw this guy I was with. He was a total character. And some people, sadly, that are great artists, they don't really live in the moment for their own life. They want to do their art so they want to live so they can have something to draw from to put in their art, as opposed to life for life's sake.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I remember that about him. I thought he's really into this because he thinks it can turn into something, as opposed to just being here as a person and being happy in his own moment of his life.
Wow. Yeah,
I remember that very well.
Well, very inspired by him for sure. And now,
it's funny when you ask me about films. I don't know why this came to mind. Marathon Man. I just remember seeing that film and going, "Oh my God! Like, I don't want to watch this, and I can't take my eyes off it at the same time."
Thrilling.
It's a train wreck, like completely compelling, horrible. Oh my God! I need to see it. I don't want to see it. I have to see it. It was like one of those
wonderful movie.
Yeah.
William Goldman, beautiful script.
Yeah.
Amazing. And Laurence Olivier, a comeback.
Oh,
a
amazing
comeback,
performance.
and the great story about Dustin Hoffman and their different styles.
Yeah. Now, when you say Laurence Olivier, you made me think of Susan Sarandon in Atlantic City. Wasn't that? Yeah,
Yes,
that's
fantastic.
another performance that I just.
Fantastic movie. Yeah, Atlantic City, right. Louis Malle, yeah.
And this scene with her, she's like, it was a really sexy scene where she's standing in the kitchen.
Lemons.
And she's putting the lemons like on her breast, and he's watching through the window. And it's another one of those, like from your childhood, you go, "Oh my God, I can't believe I'm allowed to watch this.
Yeah.
This is amazing."
I don't know what that is, but
Yeah.
it's not like what I'm used to.
Right, yeah.
And
I've never seen my mother do that. She has lemons, but there's usually smoked fish involved.
No,
Like,
there's usually
no-
Lemon Joy.
Yeah.
Which
Not
is
even
an
real
odd
lemons.
name for a dish because there's no joy there.
There's no joke.
So it's now I want to
And no lemon, by the way.
and no lemon. It's artificial lemon and no joy, which is the original working title. Procter & Gamble said no. We tested
gonna
it.
work. No.
Not going to fly.
Not as good.
Don't like it. Go ahead. Next. That's right. Okay, I have something called Does. What is it? What is it? It's a dishwashing liquid. Next.
With Doves?
Yeah, they had
Doves.
a thing called Does.
Oh,
It's
they're
a
saying doves,
detergent.
because isn't there doves?
There's Dove.
There's no birds in the. Thank God, there's no doves in the dove.
There's no dove in the
No.
dove. See, this is the thing. They come up with catchy things. Everybody thinks it's how you sell it. It's how you
Right,
sell it.
right.
America. At any rate, are you listening? No. Now you have something that maybe you want to read, and then we need
little bit,
to
like a quickie.
a little quickie, and
Yeah.
then we're going to talk about Judy for a short bit,
well-
because we need to talk about Judy,
This piece. Okay, let's do that. Yeah.
and or maybe you want to close with this.
Yes, because this came out of what happened. Let's talk about Judy first.
Okay,
That's a
so
good idea.
so Judy Toll was one of the funniest, greatest friend, most passionate. I don't know of anybody who loved to laugh, comedy, or
And make
entertainment,
people laugh.
and made people laugh more than Judy Toll.
I agree.
But she just loved it.
She was oxygen for her.
That was oxygen.
And it was very natural for her. It was not forced. There are a lot of great comics that it's just technical. She just was, some people, they say the difference between a clown and a comic. Like, she was a clown in a way.
Yeah.
She couldn't help herself. She was just funny.
She was just funny.
Whether it was physically funny, whether, with what she did physically on stage, whether it was the story she was telling, the way she talked about someone who ripped straight from the headlines of her own life.
Yeah.
I mean, this was a woman who was single forever, desperately wanted to get married, would go on these horrendous J dates, and then on Saturday night, and then on Sunday get on stage at the Uncab, Beth Lapidus' show, and just do a diagram of how horrible the date was.
Yeah.
And just download the date. And they were hilarious the way she would do it, but they were heartbreaking things because none of them were the right guy.
Well, Andy Kindler,
love him.
Very good friends with Judy, dated her at one point. I did at one point.
I thought so. That's what I said to Hugh when I saw him today.
We did. We were good friends, and he dated her. And I happened to date her at a time when she was looking into Scientology.
Oy, yes.
And so this was
Just telling someone the story.
Amazing. Yeah, this was an amazing. She'd call me from the Scientology Center when they were doing their sweats.
Yeah, and it
niacin
was like
fast.
$100,000 on a credit card that she didn't have. I mean,
Yeah.
this is a woman who was selling chipwiches out of a kiosk in front of the La Brea tar pits.
Yeah.
So she really didn't have the money to be going to sweat for $300 a day. But they convinced her, because it's a cult.
Yeah.
They convinced her, and so she did it.
Yeah.
But God bless her. This is the moxie this woman had. God rest her soul. She sued the Church of Scientology and won.
Oh yeah, she won. Yeah.
She won $100,000, and she bought a car, and she called the car her Scientology mobile. And she would go on stage and say, "Listen, I have to tell you a story." You know how she really all with her eyes. Something happened. I was involved with the church for a year and a half of my life. It was kind of a cult. I can't mention the name because something could happen, but suffice it to say that I was a member of the Church of somethingology. I mean, Liontology.
Yeah.
Oh my God! But I love that she had that car, and that was her Scientology mobile.
She was amazing, and then unfortunately got sick.
Yeah.
It was always
cancer.
somebody who talked about it
Yeah,
like it was a
hypochondriac.
like it was a joke.
Oh, so here's
talked
the
about it on
interact.
stage.
Yeah. Remember, she had that bit. She said, if
Leap.
you're not a Scientologist, if you're not a hypochondriac, but you'd like to be, you can do it. This is how you do it. You get a symptom and you leap to its fatal conclusion.
That's right.
Headache, brain cancer.
Right.
Yeah.
So she
Cough, emphysema. See how it works? She say to the whole audience, "Come on, after the show, we'll all go get a CAT scan."
she's so good.
So
she was
good.
And so
Real.
she unfortunately got sick, and in the last days she was in the hospital, and all of her friends came and congregated in a room that was
Never
near
forget
the
it.
bed.
I'll never forget it.
And it was like the Groundlings
Yeah.
and Taylor Negron and
Yeah.
you and I went and Kathy Griffin and
Andy
all
Kindler
these people.
and people getting drunk and all. I mean, I don't think people had ever had that much fun in a hospital waiting room.
They told us
they
to
didn't know what to
sh-
do. They kept saying, "Just be quiet.
Please
Yeah.
be quiet.
Oh, yeah.
But it was laughing and crying. It was like a pre-Shiva.
It was.
Is what it was. It was
perfect.
unbelievable.
What it was imbued with Judy's spirit.
Yeah.
It couldn't be any other way.
She had us laughing.
As she was dying.
As she was dying.
Right.
Yeah. Well, we have to, just honor her, remember her.
You haven't had a chance to see the play yet, and I can't wait for you to see it. But essentially, what happened was Judy passed, and it was a wake-up call in my life. What happened was I was in a marriage. It wasn't a particularly good marriage. He's a good guy, just wasn't the right guy for me. I wasn't the right woman for him. And I was thinking I could spend the next 15, 20 years of my life, whining and complaining about my bad marriage. And then my friend died, and I woke up, and I went, oh my God, how insulting is it to her that I'm going to stay in my bad marriage and complain about it when she doesn't even have a life? I have a life, I should go and live it. And that was the turning point. So Ripe is about really my friend passing and grieving that, and then starting my life over and reinventing myself in my 40s and beginning again. Because I realized I have this beautiful thing called a life. I'm healthy. I'm well. I can do anything with my life. What am I going to do? Just stay in mediocrity? No, I'm not. And I said to my husband at the time, I'm not happy. You're not happy. What are we doing here? And let's move on and let's have better lives. And that's what we did. So
It's a very good story, and it's very inspiring.
Oh.
It's a very good story. And
every day of my life, I think if I could only bring her back, that would be I can't. We don't have that ability. But I feel like she gave me so many gifts while she was here, and so much joy, as she did to so many people who met her and knew her work. And then after she passed, she gave me this gift to find myself alive again, like to really understand how lucky I am.
And that's the best way to honor
Yeah.
a friend that you love so much, is to be a friend to yourself and
Yeah.
the people that you're with.
Yeah.
And so you came to this show, and this is the show.
Judy and I spent a lot of time, as a lot of women do, obsessing about our bodies. Our stomachs should be flatter, our asses should be littler, we should have our thigh, all this stuff. And then at the end, when she was dying and she was so thin, but she was bloated from the drugs, like none of it mattered. Like her body was perfect when she was alive and healthy, but she didn't know it. just like all of us walking around. The fact that we're walking, we're inhaling and exhaling, we have normal blood count, we have vital organs. Perfect. So my show, the premise of my show, basically the opening line of my show, I say May 2nd, 2002, which is the day Judy passed. May 2nd, 2002, the day I realized my body is perfect. And I go through the story about going on the road with her and us traveling together as comics and having a blast. And then when she's dying, and then really after as she dies, realizing that this is my body is perfect and I'm healthy and let's go have a life. So that was a gift she gave me. Yeah. And
Amazing.
the show sounds very serious, but it's actually very funny because I wrote the show. It's very physically driven, so there's a lot of movement in the play. And I wrote, like, my ass wanted to write a monologue, my breasts want to write a monologue, my elbows. That's how I wrote it. I wrote it for my body. So I'm going to read you one little
Sure. This is a
little piece here.
This is an excerpt from the show,
Yeah.
Wendy's show called Ripe, which is going to be touring around the country.
Yeah, we're going to in January. So Judy, you know, I go to the hospital, St. John's, the day you were talking about. We were in that room with all the people. I arrived to what's left of her body. Her spirit is already floating somewhere above the hospital on Santa Monica Boulevard, dancing with the clouds in cowboy boots, a mini skirt, and those tacky cherry earrings. You remember those earrings she would wear?
Yes, I do.
And then a few days later, we go to Sit Shiva with Rick, who
Yes.
was Judy's newlywed and newly widowed husband. Rick said the reason Judy waited so long to marry is because she didn't want to settle. Settle. The word floated out of his mouth and lodged itself into my brain. Settle. That's what I had done. I mean, there I was sitting on a couch in the valley in honor of my dear friend, and all I could think was that I'd settled in my marriage. I felt like a jerk, self-centered and inappropriate, but I knew that I had to get out or I would die. Not like my precious friend in the hospital with tubes and oxygen, but rather a different kind of dead. And then this part speaks to, I think, what a lot of people probably experience when they're at the end of a relationship. It wasn't his fault, and it wasn't mine. On paper, we were perfect. If J-Date had been invented, we would have been their poster children. But in reality, we didn't have a chance. I was 24 when I met him, and 27 when we married, and that's just stupid. At that age, I was like Jell-O that hadn't set yet. I was just starting to figure out what shape my life should take. And my husband and I, well, we were like puzzle pieces from two entirely different puzzles that had been put in the same box, and we were never going to fit together, never. So we did what any two people who weren't having much fun in their marriage would do. We wrote a comedy act and took it on the road. And then it goes on from there. But
It's fantastic.
Thank you.
Fantastic.
so
That's great. That is. It's.
You knew her, so
it's. I can't. I have to come see you.
when I do the show in Florida, her mother and her brother are going to see it for the first time. Her brother's seeing it, her mom's going to be there. So
That's fantastic. Her brother's very funny too.
he made a documentary about
Gary.
her life. Yeah, Gary
Yeah.
told, great guy. He called The Funniest Girl You Never Heard Of. And I think they sold to Showtime. It's on Showtime. Great movie.
Good for him.
Yeah,
Good for
he's
him.
good guy.
All right. We love you, Judy. You know that.
Yeah, Joodles.
You know that.
Joodles!
You know that. Leap. All right. Okay. Well, I can't thank you enough.
Oh, my pleasure.
So nice
Thank
to
you so
see
much.
you.
It's delightful.
Wendy Hammers, and
Yay.
tell them where they find out everything.
Oh, yeah. Two places. You can go online to wendyhammers.com. My last name is Hammers, like if I had a hammer with an S.
Yep.
wendyhammers.com. Or the play, you can go to Ripe, R-I-P-E, ripetheplay.com. So ripetheplay.com or wendyhammers.com. And I think we're going to hear some more music.
Find out
Is that
all
true?
about it. It is. It
Yay.
is.
They're
This
so
is-
awesome.
I know. These guys are
I want them to
amazing.
do tasty words. I want them to come
They
to my show.
should. They
Guys,
should.
We already have a booking. So
They,
need
they
you.
should. They have the most amazing. They have a schedule that is pretty amazing. If you go on their website,
will.
it's like crazy.
The
Americans-
Music.com.
AmericansMusic.com, and then there's a Facebook page also, which is
Okay.
the American, which is
Cool.
fantastic. Okay, so
Thank you.
thank you,
Mwah.
Wendy.
Great to see you, Ed.
Good to see you. Thank you for coming.
Oh, anytime.
Pleasure, a pleasure, a pleasure. All right. Well, folks, whatever you're doing right now, you might be paying an overdue gas bill. I don't know what you're doing. I don't know what you're looking at. I don't know if you're in front of a screen. I don't know if you're dancing around the living room. I don't know. But I want you to know that there's always a place for you right here in the Self-Help Comedy Hour with Ed Crasnick. And I want to thank Justin Wise on sound because he's a very sound person. And he really is. And really, Justin is the way that I came to find out about the Americans, because he's from Colorado and he had been at the Telluride Film Festival. And he said, I saw this band and they are amazing. and then we started to get in touch. And so I'm very glad that we did, and I'm very glad that you guys came down. Now, tell us, Patrick and Jake, what are we going to hear, and what's the setup? What's the background of this song?
Well, like I told you, we're a rock and roll band, so a lot of the stuff without all the guys on electric guitars, it doesn't translate. So we thought we'd do another story tune, if that's all right with you.
Love it. I love it. I love it.
This is a bit newer than the last one, and we put it on our most recent album, and it's a song called Jim. I'll play it for you.
Love it. This is Jim, Patrick Ferris,
Can we cut that fan, if you don't mind?
and okay, and Jake Faulkner, Patrick Ferris, Jake Faulkner, The Americans, and the song is Jim.
Crowded streets of Cleveland, never seemed so far away. In our house in South Ohio, when the morning paper came. As a boy I used to play in a cottonwood tree. One time I stayed up there all day, keep the old man away from me. In a knapsack in the corner, my pants in roundabout, sticks and things, yo-yo string, from the days he'd run me out. When his foolish pride tore open wide, he called me little man Jim, till the day he died. Blood beating in my eardrums the moment he'd come. Drinking at the shop, scraps of leather tied together, wound a hefty crop. Things turned ugly. My mother clutched me in the kitchen whispering, Jim, listen. You listen to me, Jim. You can do better than him. You're no little man, Jim. You'll do better than him. Time passes slowly when you're raised about town, but you grow up, wouldn't you know it? You're gone and settled down. I lost my one good shot out in the county seat, and my own wife's been running behind my back, making a fool of me. Hard candy in my pocket, sister's locket, sitting in the pawn, wandering temptation, bus stop station, staying up past dawn. I quit drinking at Mod Saloon, feel out of place when they see my face. They call me the little man Jim. I want nothing to do with them. over Circleville today. The news Aunt April died. He had more to say. You know this place wouldn't look so tired if you just put a little work in. You could hold your head up that much higher when these hillbillies get to smirking. Anyway, how long you gonna hang around the holler, hauling water, staring at loose ends, getting wasted on your paycheck and other folks' expense? Your pa stood in this doorway, stood in your way. He's long gone, don't you go wrong. Now you look here, Jim, you can do better than him. It ain't too late, Jim, you can do better than him. Something troubling came up bubbling, some ancient pain through my aching brain. And I told him, like my old man would have done on his front lawn. I said, go on home, cousin, you ain't allowed here. You better get on home, you know you ain't allowed here. And anyway, you ain't from around here. With your high-class drawl, you know it all. And your pretty wife, you better think twice, giving me advice. You talk poorly about my old man to find out the kind of man I am. With money cousin lent me, my pistol in my shirt, I steered the wheel for Mars, get my money's worth. I drank from the bottle, from the jar and from the can, until my words spilled quickly into the ears of every man. And when they called out little man Jim, I didn't give a damn.
Oh, wow. Patrick Ferris, Jake Faulkner, the Americans, I just can't thank you enough. I mean, it's such a pleasure, and wow.
Thanks for having me.
Oh, I'm blown away. I just so nice to hear your music and so nice to meet you. And December 9th, Wilshire Ebell Theater, an evening with Angelica Houston, a book that she's coming out with, and you guys are going to play some songs. You can play some music. It's great. And we're gonna follow you, and I hope we'll work together again. I hope have you again. And I want to thank everybody for listening. And the Self-Help Comedy Hour is heard each and every week here on Wrecking Ball Radio. Keep coming back. It works if you work it. Thank you very much to Jason Tanner for letting me be here. I'm Ed Crasnick. Have a great week.